closing times, which we've seen numerous times. There's, on the fourth slide, there's metadata for the photograph at the South Street Cafe. It looks like this is essentially an advocacy piece, a closing argument, rather than something that summarizes or explains voluminous documents to the jury, as we saw with Agent Perry. So I would object to the use. Just going through it again, it also has cell tower information. We've seen these photographs of the cell towers before. We've seen these phone records with respect to the cell towers before. So I think it's cumulative. It's not proper use of a summary witness, and I think it's objectionable.
Thank you. Your Honor, I was intending to go through certain distances, times that relate to Boston. He was the officer who was involved in the recovery of some of those videos, and to the extent that there were different routes or routes driven at different speeds, I would ask him about that, which related the route back to North Attleboro as well down to Providence. And I don't think that's been covered, and particularly not in the detail that this witness is able to
He's
do.
going to testify as to recovery of videos and his driving and speeds of driving.
Yes, Your Honor.
Anything else with respect to testimony before we get to the slides? Topics of testimony.
No, it's all, location driven and distance and time of travel.
And then, is it your plan to use each one of these slides?
Not each one, Your Honor, but to the extent that there are some exhibits, excuse me, in the map form that I might use in lieu of some of the other ones, but to the extent that it would be necessary to...
Right. To the extent the motion is seeking to preclude him from testifying at all, that's denied. I will allow him to testify with respect to his capturing the videos or obtaining the videos. It is, to the extent he talks about doing the route, it is duplicative, but my recollection was there was a fairly vigorous cross-examination of that witness as to the whether they may have slowed down or sped up so their times would match the times that they anticipated getting. So I think it's fair to have a second witness who drove that route, or either as the driver or in the car, to testify as to the speed they were going and why they were going the speed they were going. So in terms of the driving of the route, I will allow, in terms of testimony, many of these, you're not trying to get any of this in as an exhibit, the slides, right, as opposed to use as a chalk?
Yes.
Right. So we don't have the issue of them coming in as exhibit, but several of them as a chalk, I would not allow. They contain commentary really on the evidence, the car arriving, whether there's a car arriving or whether there's a car seen, there's a car passing at 3:27. That's really up to the jury to see whether there was or wasn't a car passing. So all of these that have sort of commentaries, I would not allow, and would I think that he can go through what he did and where he did it without us going back on a lot of the videos. But if he wants to, I won't prohibit him from commenting that they went by X or Y cell tower. But I think the pictures, there's some of these slides that put a gas receipt together, two different exhibits together. I think that I would, or two different, from different exhibits, that kind of narrative of putting the exhibits together For this witness, I would not permit, but other ones, the picture of the Weston tolls, if he wants to say he went through the tolls and this is what the timing of the tolls, and this is what the tolls looked like. But to the extent it's commentary and it's referring to a call from this time to this time for these 25 seconds, combining it with, or Hernandez and Shiana arrive, those are all jury issues as to who's being seen in the clip at any time. And I note as well, the time is different from the descriptive time is different from the system time, which depends on whether the jury does or doesn't accept the testimony with respect to the time delay. But since it's not clear which slide is being used, I'll wait to see which slide the Commonwealth proposes to use, if any, during his testimony, so we can bring the juries back.
5 minutes, maybe we can just...
Sure, go over together. Sure. Hold on. 5 minutes. 5 minutes on this clock, 12:30.
That this afternoon, and then the testimony to follow tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if that's agreeable, because I think we're going to run it, essentially, as you know, based on our conversation at the sidebar, that witness now is going to be pushed till tomorrow, Mr. Reset. So I don't expect we're going to take all afternoon for Trooper Duma. In fact, I don't know that it's going to be that long yet.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we had understood that Bradley was being brought in today to talk to his lawyer, and that we were going to do examinations of him tomorrow. I'm not prepared to do a voir dire or questioning of Bradley today.
Okay, I just raised it because he was brought in today. The lawyer has spoken to him, and so he would be available if...
Right, but yesterday, I remember it was stated we wouldn't do an examination until Wednesday, so if Mr. Rankin is saying he's not prepared, I'm not going to force it. Who else is there besides Bradley and Mr. Duma?
For today, Your Honor?
No, I mean, how many, what's the sort of schedule?
Essentially, if tomorrow wasn't a half day, I think we would probably finish.
Okay, so will there be a medical examiner?
Yes, there is, Your Honor, and he's scheduled for tomorrow, but depending upon how things go now, because of Mr. Reset,
may make more sense Thursday.
Thursday,
and is that it? Are there any authentication people on the recordings? Are you still trying to get in any recordings?
We're still trying to resolve that, Your Honor. As you know, it's a little bit, it's thinned down, so we haven't finally decided on that.
Okay.
But I don't think it's going to be, to answer your question, Thursday would be, I suspect, to be the day.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I could address the court on scheduling as well.
Before we get to, you're talking about, is your scheduling dealing with the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Before we get to that, I was just,
Sure.
we may, tomorrow is a early sort of 1 o'clock stopping. I don't know how long Bradley's will go. It may make sense that the jury come in 9:30 instead of, they're usually very here promptly, so they're always here by 8:30, and I don't want them waiting, sitting for a long time. So I might have them come in at 9:30 so we can do the voir dire first thing in the morning. And then you had...
Yes, sure. Your Honor, it says that the Commonwealth is likely to rest on Thursday. Friday, of course, is a half day. I guess my suggestion, and I have at least one witness, Your Honor, who's coming from Texas, the Cellmark witness. I guess my suggestion, Your Honor, is that we do the Rule 25 argument on Friday, if the court will hear us. We intend to file a written motion when the Commonwealth rests, and that we do a charge conference if the jury will file a written request for instructions by Thursday. If the court could do that on Friday, if that's convenient to the court, and then we would bring in our witnesses on Monday. Logistically, that would be a lot easier for us. I don't want to have a witness go over the weekend from out of town.
And then, would you anticipate being beyond Monday?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you. Let's bring the jurors back.
We did speak over the break, and I wonder if we could go for just a little bit. There's certain things I have to clean up over the lunch hour off of those slides. So if we could maybe go 15 minutes and then have an early lunch.
Sure. Just indicate when you're ready for.
Okay, thank you.
For a break. So tomorrow morning, first thing, we'll do the Bradley Wadia. And today, after Dumont, there are no other witnesses after Dumont today, right?
That's correct, Your Honor.
And Thursday. Okay. Thank you. Let's bring the juries back in.
Please face the clerk and raise your right hand.
You swear that your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Sir, state your full name
Christopher Dumont,
and spell your last name, please.
D-U-M-O-N-T.
Do you work?
I do.
Where do you work?
I'm assigned as a state trooper with the Massachusetts State Police
Okay, how are you currently assigned?
to the Bristol County District Attorney's Office.
Okay, is that the detective unit?
That's correct.
How long have you been in that unit?
Been in that unit approximately 8 years, 8 to 9 years.
And how long have you been a Massachusetts State Trooper?
With the Massachusetts State Police, 10 years.
Okay. Prior to that, did you work somewhere else?
I worked for approximately 6 years for the New Bedford Police Department.
Okay. Now, I'd just like to direct your attention to the investigation of the homicide of Odin Lloyd. Were you involved in that?
Yes.
And at what point did you become involved in that?
On June 19th, 2013.
Okay. And on that date, were you assigned particular tasks?
Yes, I was.
And what tasks were you assigned?
I was assigned to go to the Boston area, particularly Fayston Street.
Okay. And what was your purpose in going to that area of Fayston Street?
It was explained to me that there was video surveillance on Fayston Street, particularly of the area of number 10 Fayston Street, and my task was to determine available routes of travel of a silver Nissan Altima that had been seen leaving that location on June 17th.
Okay, and in furtherance of that assignment, just tell us, what did you do?
Knowing that the vehicle had left that location and ultimately...
object to the commentary. Answer of what he did.
Let me just ask you this. Did you go to Fayston Street?
I did.
And are you familiar with an address of 10 Fayston Street?
I am.
And at 10 Fayston Street, do you know where 9 Fayston Street is?
I do.
And where is that in relation to 10?
Roughly directly across the street.
Okay. And was there certain video surveillance that was recovered from 9 Fayston Street?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have occasion to view some of that surveillance footage?
At a later date.
Okay. And as a result of your assignment, did you go to the area of Fayston Street and Blue Hill Avenue?
I did.
And in terms of that location, are you familiar with Quincy Street?
I am.
And how far is that from the intersection of Fayston Street and Blue Hill Avenue?
1 block.
Okay. And is Fayston Street one-way or two-way?
Is one way west.
Okay. And as you come one way west, which way is Quincy? Is it right or left?
You would take a right going north.
Okay. Did you go to that intersection of Quincy and Blue Hill Avenue?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And when you did that, did you make any observations of whether there's any surveillance in that area?
I did.
Okay. Excuse me. And where is the surveillance in that area?
I noted a camera mounted on top of a traffic signal arm that holds the traffic lights up. I also noticed cameras at a Citgo gas station right on the corner, actually in between those two streets on the block.
Okay. And did you make efforts to recover any surveillance relating to a particular date and time from those locations?
Yes.
Okay. And what date and time were you focused on?
Focusing on from 2:33 in the morning on the 17th of June, moving forward from there.
Okay. And you said there was a Citgo station?
Yes.
And were you able to recover any surveillance from that location?
I was able to view a monitor inside the gas station that did show me some footage from that evening.
Okay, and just in terms of the quality of what you were able to view, just describe that.
It was very poor. The nighttime image was very poor and grainy.
Okay, so to the extent that you were able to see anything, what could you see?
I could see that vehicles were passing by.
Okay, in terms of vehicles, could you see what types of vehicles, just lights or?
I could make out the types of vehicles, but as in a sedan or an SUV, but not particularly what kind of vehicle it was.
Okay, so with regard to the intersection of Quincy and Blue Hill Avenue, did you contact anyone in regards to any surveillance video from that location?
Yes.
And who did you contact?
I spoke with Sergeant Detective Michael Stratton of the
Okay.
Boston Police.
Okay. And as a result of that, did you later recover certain surveillance from Detective Michael Stratton?
Yes.
Okay. Now, just in terms of your involvement, where did you go from Quincy and Blue Hill Avenue?
Based on,
Okay,
Objection sustained. Question is simply, where did you go?
right. Not anything about what anyone told you.
I went north on Blue Hill Avenue
Okay.
from Quincy.
And when you went north on Blue Hill Avenue, did you find any other locations that had potentially surveillance video?
Yes.
And what other locations were you able to recover video?
There's many locations that we observed, particularly other city cameras and also private establishments.
Okay. Where was the next city camera that you observed?
It was over at Blue Hill Avenue and West Cottage Street.
Okay. And did you make efforts to recover that video?
Yes,
Okay. Did you later have an opportunity to look at that video?
we did.
Okay. And did that assist in any way? Were you able to see anything?
It was not a value.
Okay. Now, what about, if there were any private locations that you also made efforts to recover video?
Right. There were several private locations that we made contact with. Some had no...
Well, you're using "we." You've been asked about you, so if you could testify as to what you did, not what someone else may have done.
Was somebody else with you, sir? When you
On
say
some
we,
occasions there were, but particularly on that date, it was myself that was looking for cameras.
Okay, so again, if you just refine your answers to what you did. So these other private locations, were you able to recover other video?
Yes.
And was some of it just not of any value?
There were some not of any value out of range of the street.
Okay. In terms of where some of these cameras pointed, do you know what portions of the street, if any, they even covered?
Closer to the sidewalk, not the actual roadway.
I see. So at some point after the Blue Hill Avenue and Cottage, West Cottage, did you also make observations of a city camera in the area of Blue Hill and Dudley?
Yes.
And what action did you take as a result of that?
I asked Sergeant Detective Stratton to check that camera.
Okay. And at some time later, was that provided to you?
It was.
And were you able to make observations of that footage?
Yes.
In terms of the time frame that you were looking for, were you able to note any vehicles that were of interest to you?
Yes.
And what vehicle were you looking for?
A Nissan Altima.
Okay, and were you able to see a Nissan Altima in any of the footage around the times that you were looking at?
Yes.
Okay. Approximately what times? If you recall.
At Blue Hill and Dudley, several minutes after the 2:33, so approximately 2:37, 2:38.
Okay. Now, were you also assigned a task, in addition to recovering surveillance, to make certain determinations of routes of travel?
Yes.
And did that include the routes that you would be able to travel between different points?
That's correct.
And would you take either measurements by time or distance between those points?
Yes.
Okay. Now, at some point, did you begin at 10 Fayston Street?
Yes.
And from there, where did you drive, sir?
Drove west on Fayston Street and took a right going north on Blue Hill Avenue.
Okay, and that distance from 10 Fayston Street to Blue Hill, to taking a right on Blue Hill, is approximately how far?
A couple 100 feet, 300 feet.
Okay. And then from there, excuse me, from there, where did you drive to?
I continued north on Blue Hill Avenue through the intersection with Quincy.
Okay. And again, was that one of the areas that you had noted there was some surveillance?
That's correct.
Okay. After passing through there, did you continue to a location of Blue Hill Avenue and Dudley Street?
Yes.
And was that also a location that you would later recover surveillance?
Yes.
Okay. Where is the next point after that that you were able to recover surveillance video?
There was surveillance video recovered from the Casa Esperanza building on Hamden Street.
Okay. And then Hamden Street, where is that located in, are you familiar with the Molina's Cass Boulevard?
Melnia Cass Boulevard.
Yes. How close is that, Hamden Street?
Hamden connects into Melnia Cass, so it's several blocks away.
Okay. Did you drive to, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, Molina Cass?
Melnia Cass Boulevard.
Molina Cass. And from that location, did you then, where did you go at that intersection of Hamden and Molina's Cass?
So I turned right on Melnia Cass Boulevard and drove towards Massachusetts Avenue.
Okay. In Massachusetts Avenue, just what area of the city is that located in?
Roxbury.
Okay. At some point, are you familiar with the Mass Connector?
Yes, I am.
Did you travel towards the Mass Connector?
Yes.
Okay. Now, just going back from 10 Fayston Street, can you describe all the roads that you took to get to the Mass Connector?
So from 10 Fayston Street, I went west on Fayston Street, took a right onto Blue Hill Avenue going north. I then took a right onto Moreland Street, which is going east. Took a left onto Dennis Street going north. At the intersection of Dennis and Dudley, I took a left going west. Through the intersection, on Dudley going west, went through the intersection where Blue Hill Avenue starts. Took a right onto Hampton Street, going towards Melnia Cass Boulevard. Took a right on Melnia Cass Boulevard, going east, crossed over Massachusetts Avenue onto the Mass Ave connector.
Okay. And with regard to that route that you traveled, had you recovered surveillance along that route and had an occasion to view it to determine whether there was a silver Nissan Altima showing in any of the surveillance?
Yes.
Okay. That route, was that generally a direct route to get to the Mass Connector?
No.
Okay. How far out of the way would, or how indirect was it to get between those 2 points, 10 Fayston and the Mass Connector?
Coming off of Blue, to be direct, you would stay on Blue Hill Avenue going towards Dudley Street rather than taking that right. That would have brought you down to Dennis Street and then using Dennis to go to Dudley. So that was coming off the main road.
Okay. How far would you say it was a detour off the main road?
2 blocks down off of Blue Hill Avenue.
Okay.
And then you had to do the 2 blocks back to Blue Hill Avenue, so several blocks off the route.
And how much driving time did that add to what would have been a more direct route?
It may have added a minute.
Okay. Did you clock the distance between 10 Facein Street and getting to the Mass Connector?
Yes.
And approximately how long did it take you to drive?
That was approximately 7 to 8 minutes.
Okay. And what time of day or night were you driving?
On one of the occasions, it was evening,
Okay. How many occasions did you drive that route?
at least twice.
Okay. And when you were driving in the evening, what were the traffic conditions at that time?
Traffic's much heavier.
Okay. And did you drive it at a lighter time, when traffic was lighter?
Yes.
Okay. Now, so 7 or 8 minutes to the Mass Connector. Where did you go from the Mass Connector?
From the Mass Connector, I continued east over the overpass for Route 93, where I meet Frontage Road, which is has a traffic signal. Took a left onto Frontage Road, followed that roadway down towards the on-ramp to Route 90 West, which is also the Mass Turnpike.
Okay. And were you able to make observations of any surveillance cameras along that stretch from Frontage Road now to the Mass Pike?
Yes.
And tell us about those locations. How many cameras did you observe?
I observed several cameras, probably 6, 7, or 8 cameras in total.
As a result of making those observations, did you contact anyone in an effort to gather potential surveillance?
Yes.
And who did you, excuse me, who did you contact?
I contacted first the Mass Department of Transportation.
Okay. And were you able ultimately to recover surveillance from any of those cameras?
Yes.
How many cameras actually recorded?
There were approximately 7 that had usable recorded images.
Okay. And after recovering those, did you have an opportunity to look at, to view the surveillance for a time frame in between 2:33 in the morning and 3 a.m.?
Yes.
And based on the time that you had traveled from Facein Street to that area where these cameras began, did you add that time to the 2:33?
Yes.
Okay. And how much time did you add?
It's from Facein Street to the entrance to the 90 West ramp. It was 10 minutes.
Okay. So at approximately then the 7 or 8 minutes, I think you indicated, to get to the Mass Connector.
Correct.
Did you then look at the video in the time frame of 2:40, approximately 2:40 a.m.?
Yes.
And were you able to observe any vehicles that appeared to be similar to a silver Nissan Altima?
Yes.
Now, from camera to camera, were you able to track a particular vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. And ultimately, were you able to determine from the cameras what route of travel that Nissan Altima went?
I was.
And where did it go?
It went on to Route 90 West, the Mass Turnpike.
Okay. Now, you indicated it was approximately 10 minutes from Facein Street to the Mass Pike.
That's correct.
Did you at some point actually travel the Mass Pike yourself?
Yes.
And which direction did you travel?
Westbound.
And how far did you take it westbound?
To the Weston Toll Booth Plaza.
Okay, and how long did it take you from when you got on to the Mass Pike to get to the Weston toll booth?
That was also 10 minutes.
Okay, so your total time of travel now from 10 Facein Street to the Weston toll booth was what time?
Approximately 20 minutes.
Okay, so having, at some point, did you travel at approximately 2:33 in the morning from Facein Street?
Yes, I did.
And when you traveled at 2:33 Facein Street, did you go that same direction of travel you've described to get to the Weston toll?
Yes, I did.
And what time did you arrive at the Weston toll?
At approximately 2:53.
Okay, and approximately what speeds were you traveling in the course of going from 10 Facein to the Weston toll to make it there in 20 minutes at 2:53 a.m.?
For the highway portion, approximately 70 to 75 miles an hour in that 55-mile zone.
Okay, and with regard to just other traffic, you said that it's posted as 55?
That's correct.
Just in terms of the flow of traffic, what speeds were you traveling with regard to other traffic?
I would say we're generally going with the flow of traffic. However, we were being passed quite often at the 70 to 75 miles an hour.
Okay. Now, tell us what you do when you get to the Western Toll?
So at the Western Toll, I went through toll lane number 3 and continued on to Route 128 South.
Okay, and once you get onto Route 128 South, where are you heading?
Heading south towards the North Attleboro area.
Okay, and when you travel 128 South, how long did you stay on that route?
I stayed on that road till the ramp for 95 South.
And once you arrived there, how much time had passed from the time you had arrived at the Western Toll to when you left 128 South?
It's approximately 10 minutes.
Okay, so your total time of travel at this time is what?
Approximately 30 minutes from Facein Street.
Okay, so having left at 2:33 in the morning, approximately what time would it be?
It would be about 3:03 in the morning, approximately.
Okay, and then from that location, which is at the intersection of 128 and 95, did you head south?
Yes, I did.
And that is towards what's the major city going south?
Attleboro.
Okay. And did you drive towards North Attleboro?
Yes.
How long did it take you from that location to get to approximately North Attleboro, Route 152?
That was approximately 15 minutes.
Okay. And so at this time, did you take an exit in North Attleboro?
Yes.
And what exit did you take?
Exit 5 to Toner Boulevard.
And during the time that now you were traveling on 128 and Route 95, what speeds were you traveling?
On that stretch, about the same speed, 70, 75 miles an hour.
Okay. Now, when you arrive at...
It's 1 o'clock. We're going to take a stop at this time for lunch recess. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, just before the break, I was asking you about certain routes of travel that you drove. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And one of the routes that you drove was through the city of Austin. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
If I could, just use the tripod here to stand. Thank you. And, Your Honor, with the court's permission, could I have the witness approach this stand? And sir, I'm referring to Exhibit 406. Put this here. Let me give you this. Okay, if you would, sir, if you would just point out to us, please, your starting location at 10 Facein Street. You see that on the map?
Street's right down at the bottom of the map here.
And if I could, I'm just going to ask you if you would stand on this side of the chart so everyone can see. Okay. And you indicated just before the lunch break certain number of streets that you traveled. Could you just show us the route of travel and just indicate the streets that you took going from Facein Street when you first indicated you took a right onto Blue Hill Avenue?
From Facein Street, took a right onto Blue Hill Avenue, proceeded up to Moreland Street, took a right turn onto Moreland Street, which is roughly in this general area right here. Then took a left turn onto Dennis Street. Now we're at Dudley, took a left turn on Dudley, back to the intersection with Blue Hill Avenue. proceeded through Blue Hill Avenue, took a slight right turn onto Hampton Street, continued on to Melnia Cass Boulevard, took a right turn, came to the intersection with Massachusetts Avenue, crossed over onto the Mass Ave connector, continued down, crossed Route 93, took a left onto Frontage Road, came down Frontage Road to this general area here where there is an on-ramp to Route 90 to go west. And this is west on Route 90, the turnpike.
Okay. Now, if we start at 10 Faiston Street, sir, you had indicated when I had asked you about the most direct route of travel, you described a particular route that you could more directly get up to Melnia Cass?
Correct.
Okay, can you just show where that is?
So we would take Blue Hill Avenue and continue north on Blue Hill Avenue rather than turning right onto Moreland to go to Dennis. If you continued on Blue Hill Avenue, you would get to the same intersection of Blue Hill Avenue and Dudley without the use of Moreland and Dennis Street.
Okay. And in between those locations where you indicated there was a less direct route, what caused you to travel, or let me ask it this way, did you check surveillance along the more direct route as you were following your path on Blue Hill Avenue?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what did you find with regard to the silver Nissan Altima?
At a certain point, I could not see the silver Nissan Altima.
Okay, and then were you able to recover it on a road adjacent to Blue Hill at the intersection of Blue Hill Avenue and Dudley?
Yes.
Okay, was that on a city camera?
Yes.
And can you just point out where you then observed that again?
At Blue Hill Avenue and Dudley, right here is where I observed it.
Okay. Now, from that point forward, was the line of travel that you tracked, was that the most direct route to get up to Frontage Road and therefore toward the Mass Pike?
Yes.
Okay. And just with regard to Route 93, do you see that shown on the map? Okay, and again, does that go to the south?
From the Mass Ave connector, you can go south or to the other points going north.
Okay, and just if you would track Route 93 of the central artery on that map.
To the north, to the south.
Okay. Now, with regard to when you indicated that you then drove through Mass Ave and then on the Mass connector up onto Frontage Road, show us where that intersection is, sir.
Mass Ave connector goes over Route 93, both north and south, and then the next road you run into is you can only take a left turn to go onto Frontage Road.
Okay. And what is the exit, if you were coming from the south on Route 93, the central artery, what is the exit to get off in that location?
If I understand you correctly, coming 93 north to
correct.
get to this general area, you would
Yes.
take exit 18, which would bring you up to this same location.
Okay. Is there a stoplight there?
There is.
And if you wanted now to go towards Faiston Street, which way would you go?
You would have to take a left going west.
Okay, and when you take a left, do you cross over, are you crossing over any road?
You're now crossing over Route 93, both north and south.
Okay, so is there a bridge there?
Yes.
Now, if you stopped right on top of that bridge and you look north, are you familiar with where Albany Street is?
Yes, I am.
And is there a camera, again, right at that intersection?
There is.
And when you look north towards Albany Street, are you familiar with a building there that has a cell tower?
Yes.
Okay, and what is, do you know what the address is there?
I know it's Albany Street.
Okay, and can you just describe the building that it's on?
It's a several-story brick structure with a cell tower actually facing, or equipment for cell towers facing the Route 93.
Okay, and just before, or as you're getting on exit 18, are you familiar with a building called the Fortress Building?
Yes.
And what type of building is that?
It's a storage facility.
Okay, and are you aware of any cell tower equipment on that building?
Yes.
Okay. And Did you, at some point, did you review surveillance footage from cameras located, as you've described, the intersection of Frontage Road and the Mass Connector?
Yes.
And did you look post 2:30 in the morning?
Yes.
And did you also look back to approximately 2:24 in the morning?
Yes.
And just in terms of your observations, did you observe a car at around 2:24 in the morning at that intersection?
Yes.
And which way did the car go at that time?
The vehicle had come up Frontage Road and took a left to go west on the Mass Ave connector.
Okay, and what type of vehicle was it?
Nissan Altima.
Okay, and color-wise?
Silver.
Okay. And with regard to, have you driven that same route at that, if you would put the pointer up there, to that location, have you driven from that point going now in reverse down to Fayston Street?
Yes.
Okay. And you indicated you observed this Nissan Altima at 2:24.
Yes.
How long did it take you to drive from that point going to 10 Fayston Street?
Approximately 8 minutes.
Okay, so if it were 2:24, what time would that take you?
To 2:32.
Okay. Now, after you had driven this route back up to the Mass Pike, I think you indicated out to the Mass Pike was approximately 20 minutes in total.
From Fayston Street, correct.
Okay. And then from the Mass Pike, I'm going to have you resume the stand. Thank you. I'll take that. And if I could use the overhead, please. So I'm just going to show you what's been marked 183A and ask you if you recognize the scene depicted in this exhibit.
Yes.
Okay, what do you recognize this to show?
Several highways in the area
Okay,
of Boston.
all right. And just orienting you to this map, you see Boston over in this area here?
Yes.
Okay. Now, with regard to 10 Fayston Street, do you recognize the general location of where 10 Fayston Street is?
Yes.
And is that, where is that shown, sir?
To the right of the screen, blue line.
I'm sorry. Okay. So let me just, is that, okay, can you see it there now?
I do.
Okay. Now, does this map reflect the route of travel that you drove from 10 Fayston Street to the Mass Pike?
Yes.
And then does it, from this location over here, sir, does it represent your route of travel out to the Weston Toll?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And you indicated that was 20 minutes.
To the Weston Tolls, correct.
I'm going to show you now what was marked 183B. And you recognize what this map, the area that this map represents. Let me try it out. You see that area up there, sir?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and what is that?
It's the Weston Toll area where the Mass Turnpike intersects with Route 128.
And so just now, using that as a point of orientation, does that reflect your route of travel that you described just before the lunch break?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And I think you indicated a certain amount of time that it took you to travel from the Weston Toll down 128 to the intersection of Route 95?
Yes,
And that was how long? Sir?
approximately 10 minutes.
And I'm just going to show you 183C. And ask you if you can point yourself to this map. Slide over down. Do you recognize this area up here, sir?
Yes.
Okay, what is that?
That's where I turned on to Route 95 going south from Route 128.
Okay. And from that location, where did you, at some point did you travel and then eventually stop?
Yes,
And where did you travel to and stop?
to 22 Ronald C. Meyer Drive.
Okay. Did you make a stop prior to that?
Yes.
And where was that?
Corliss Landing?
Now, does this map accurately reflect your route of travel?
Yes.
What is this route here?
Route 95,
Okay, and at what exit did you get off Route 95?
exit 5.
And where did you go from there?
At exit 5, I took a right onto Tona Boulevard, and then a right onto John Deach.
Okay, and then where from there?
I proceeded on John Deach to Corliss Landing.
Okay. And eventually, did you actually pull off the road in an area at Corliss Landing?
Yes, I did.
Okay. How long did it take you from the intersection of 128 and Route 95 to where you pulled in at Corliss Landing?
Approximately 18 to 19 minutes.
Okay. So in terms of the time of travel leaving 10 Baston Street at 2:33 in the morning, hitting the toll at 2:53 in the morning, what time did you hit Corliss Landing?
Approximately 50 minutes.
And when you arrived there at 50 minutes, so that would be approximately what time, sir? Having left at 2:33 in the morning, 10 Baston Street.
About 23 minutes past 3.
Okay, that's being 3 a.m.
Correct.
And how long did you remain at that location?
I remained there for approximately 4 minutes.
Okay, and then from there, so that, when you left, what time was it?
It's approximately that 3:27.
And where did you go from there?
I proceeded back onto John Deach, went left on Landry Avenue, right on Homeward, and then left onto Ronald C. Meyer Drive.
Okay. I'm just going to place 183D on the overhead. Do you recognize the scene depicted here, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Does that show Corliss Landing?
Yes.
And where would that be on the map?
Approximately where the arrow is?
Is that down in this area here?
Yes, sir.
Does this, when you say the arrow, does that show your direction of travel after leaving Corliss Landing?
Yes.
Okay. And you described that you went onto John Deach, and then from where? On John Deach.
Proceeded on John Deach, where you turn left. You're still on John Deach, but you're actually taking a left, and then a left onto Landry Avenue,
Okay.
and then a right onto Homewood Lane,
Okay.
and a left onto Ronald C. Meyer Drive.
Okay. And when you drove that distance, how long did that take you?
Approximately 3 minutes.
Okay. So what time was it approximately?
It's approximately 3:30.
Okay. And you were now at what location?
22 Ronald C. Meyer Drive.
And sir, were you asked to travel between other points to determine the time of travel and distance.
Yes.
Okay. Do you, at some point, did you travel beginning at 22 Ronald C. Meyer to an area in Providence?
Yes.
And where did you travel to in Providence?
To the South Street Cafe.
And how did you travel from 22 Ronald C. Meyer? Can you just describe your route of travel?
Back roughly the same direction we just spoke of, back to Route 95. And once on Route 95, I went south towards Providence.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm just going to place 226 on the overhead. Do you recognize this, sir, as a portion of 95 going into Providence?
Yes.
Now, once you get up onto Route 95, just tell us how did you get to the South Street Cafe?
Proceeded south into the city of Providence.
Okay.
Exited the highway. The South Street Cafe is actually not that far off the highway itself.
And did you then clock it, how long it took you driving from 22 Ronald C. Meyer to the South Street Cafe?
Yes.
And how long did it take you, how many times did you drive it, first of all?
I did it twice.
Okay, the first time you drove it, how long did it take you?
Approximately 25 minutes.
Okay, and what speeds were you driving?
I was driving with the flow of traffic. I don't believe I had an actual speed. I just went with the flow of traffic at that time.
Okay. And did you then have a second occasion then to drive from the South Street Cafe back to 22 Ronald C. Meyer?
Yes.
And did you change the speed at which you were driving?
Yes.
And what speed did you drive the second time?
For the highway portion, I drove 80 miles an hour.
Okay. And by driving at 80 miles an hour, how long did it take?
Approximately 20 minutes.
So to travel roughly, approximately, in just the time of day that you were traveling to the South Street Cafe.
It was after midnight.
Okay. So in terms of the traffic conditions, just describe what they were.
Traffic conditions were light.
And to travel 12:22 and arrive at Ronald C. Meyer 12:42, so a travel time of 20 minutes. What speed would you have to travel?
I'd have to travel at 80 miles an hour on the highway.
And what about, when you say on the highway, what about whatever roads you needed to take off the highway? What speeds did you drive?
I drove roughly those, off the highway, I drove those city and town streets at approximately the speed limit.
Okay. And now lastly, sir, did you also do a drive from 22 Ronald C. Meyer to a location in the city of Boston?
Yes.
At some point, did you actually, let me back up. When you started 22 Ronald C. Meyer, did you follow the same route through John Deach Boulevard to get out to the, Route 95?
Yes.
On this occasion, when you drove it, did you actually go a direction away from the city of Boston? Let me just ask you this. Do you recall at some point driving south on Route 95 down to the area of Collins Street?
Yes.
Okay. And the area of Collins Street, is there a commercial area down there?
Yes.
Just describe what that area, if you would.
There's a warehouse-type building, other commercial businesses.
Okay. Are you familiar with Exit 2 off of Route 95?
Yes.
And is that south of North Attleboro?
Yes, it is.
I'm approaching it now.
Me.
Now, sir, this is the same exhibit I just had up here a minute ago, 226. Does this show Route 95, sir?
Yes,
You indicated before Providence is down in this area.
that's correct.
Okay. And exit 2, do you see, let me just zoom in here for you. Okay. Can you see exit 2 here, sir?
Yes,
First of all, are you familiar with the location of exit 2 in relation to the border between Massachusetts and Rhode Island?
yes.
And is exit 2 in Mass or is it in Rhode Island?
It's in Massachusetts.
How close is it to the border?
Approximately 1 mile.
Okay. Now, once you, in this area here, does that show the border? Can you see the border on this map?
I can see it.
Okay. And do you know where Central Falls is?
Yes, I do.
And where is Central Falls?
Where you see Route 95 coming towards the left, bottom left of the screen, where it crosses the border there, that's Central Falls is in that area. Approximately there.
Okay, let me just move this a little bit. Can you see that now?
I can.
Okay. So, have you ever exited at exit 2?
Yes.
And just in regard to that area you described, are there any cell towers that are observable in that area?
Yes.
Okay, and where is that?
Right on the property of a business on Collins Street.
Okay. Now, sir, at some point, did you then, did you measure the distance between, or travel, between Ronald C. Meyer and Collins Street?
Yes.
And approximately how long were you driving the prevailing speed?
Yes.
And how long did that take you?
Approximately 11 minutes.
Now, just yes or no, did you review certain cell phone records to establish certain times that you were then going to measure distances between?
Yes.
And did you after reviewing those, did you begin in the area of Collins Street?
Yes.
And from Collins Street, did you head north on Route 95?
I did.
And are you familiar with a cell tower in the area of Foxborough?
Yes.
And did you time the travel time between Collins Street and the Foxborough cell tower?
Yes.
And how long was that?
It's approximately 13 minutes.
Do you recall what time that you were traveling?
I don't recall specifically on that one.
Okay. In terms of the speed that you were driving, what speed?
Approximately the speed limit.
Okay. If I could approach the overhead again, Your Honor. Me. I'm just going to put up 182A on the screen. Excuse me. And sir, after you had traveled beginning in the vicinity of the Collins Street cell tower and the Foxborough tower, where did you go from there?
Proceeded north on Route 95.
Okay. And when you proceeded north on 95, are you familiar with an area known as Blue Hills Express?
Yes.
Okay. And did you time the drive time from Collins Street to Blue Hills Express?
Yes, I did.
And how long did it take you to drive between those 2 points?
That was approximately 24 minutes.
And once you reached Blue Hill Express, did you continue your drive from there?
Yes.
And how long, where did you drive from there?
From Blue Hills Express on Route 138, I proceeded on to 93 north towards Boston.
Okay. And where did you go when you started heading back on 93 towards Boston?
I took the exit 18 to head down towards Faison Street.
And so, Would you have passed the Fortress building?
Yes,
And as well that building you described on Albany Street?
that's correct.
Okay. And how long did it take you leaving from Blue Hill Express to get to 10 Facein Street?
It's approximately 20 minutes.
And so leaving at approximately 2:12 from the Blue Hill Express, what time, how much time would it take, or what time would you arrive at 10 Facein Street?
Approximately 2:32.
If I could have a moment, Your Honor, please. And sir, are you familiar with the Enterprise rental on Washington Street in North Attleboro?
Yes, I've seen it.
Okay. And do you know from 22 Ronald C. Meyer, do you know what distance that is approximately?
Approximately 2 to 3 miles,
Okay. In terms of driving time?
2 to 3 minutes.
Okay. And are you also familiar with the location of the North Attleboro Police Station?
Yes,
And just in terms of its location or distance from 22 Ronald C. Meyer, how far is that approximately?
take approximately 5 minutes to go to the police station itself.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
No, okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Trooper DeMont.
Good afternoon.
You've done these drives a number of times, is that right?
That's correct.
So, do you know a detective from the North Attleboro Police Department named Ciccio?
Yes, sir.
And did you make a couple of drives between Facein Street and Ronald C. Meyer Drive with him?
One, I believe.
You remember June 24th, 2013, that you and Trooper Tarbokas and Ciccio made a round trip?
That's correct.
And you were driving, correct?
Yes,
And you drove from North Attleboro to 10 Facein Street, right?
yes,
And that was at about 12:30 in the morning, correct?
correct.
And Trooper, is it Tarbokas?
Yes, sir.
Tarbokas was videotaping it,
That's correct.
and Detective Ciccio was writing notes about the times when you passed things.
Correct.
And on that occasion, you were driving at the speed limit, is that right?
That's correct.
And then you retraced your steps following the same route, is that correct?
Correct.
And the route you had taken was to go to Interstate 95, up to 128, and then take 93 up the Southeast Expressway, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then on June 24th, that date, you came back in that same way.
That's correct.
You didn't take the turnpike.
That's correct.
And you prepared a report about that travel and how long it took?
I don't believe I did.
You've seen Detective Ciccio's report about that?
I may have.
Does that appear to be his report about that evening's activities?
Yes, it does.
And were you accompanied? You weren't driving your cruiser, correct?
That's correct.
You were driving a Nissan Altima,
Correct.
one that had been rented for that purpose,
Correct.
not the vehicle involved in this case,
That's correct.
but a similar model,
Correct.
to try to give it some realistic taste, so to speak.
I'm not sure the reason for it.
Did you decide to rent it?
I didn't.
You know who did?
I don't.
Somebody just gave you an ultimatum and said, here, we're going to take this on the route?
That's about right.
Do you remember who that was?
It was arranged through someone in North Attleboro Police.
Okay. So on that trip, you drove the posted speed limit, correct?
Correct.
And you left Ronald C. Meyer Drive at 1:12 in the morning?
I believe so.
See the entry in the Detective report?
Yes.
And you got to 10 Faston Street at 2:37. I'm sorry.
Yes.
So that was about an hour and 25 minutes
Approximately.
from 1:12 to 2:37.
Yes.
And that was going to speed limit.
Yes.
I'm just going to object because I can just speak to you for a second.
Okay. So, was that a straight drive, or did you stop along the way at different points?
We did stop.
Okay. And do you remember where you stopped?
Yes.
Where?
Blue Hills Express.
Okay,
gas
how long
station.
did you stop there?
I don't recall exact time that we stopped.
About a half hour.
It's possible.
1:37 to 2:14.
Yes.
Okay. And then you did a similar drive back from Faston Street back to Ronald C. Meyer Drive.
Correct.
All right. And then you took another trip on July 15th,
That's correct.
right? And that was about 3 weeks later, 3 weeks after June 24th.
Approximately.
All right, so this time it's you and Detective Ciccio and Trooper Mackin, correct?
That's correct.
Now, on that first trip, did you have a police escort?
No.
Was there a police car accompanying you at any points along the way?
There were vehicles at different locations, yes.
And do you recall that there was, have you looked at the video of that trip?
I have not.
Okay. Do you recall that there were cruisers with, police cars with blue lights flashing at various points along the way?
Yes.
And that was to facilitate your travel?
Correct.
Okay. And so on July 15th, you repeated this trip in some respects, right?
Correct.
And this was at 2:33 in the morning, right?
Yes.
And this time you were driving an unmarked state police cruiser.
Correct.
And was it the same situation that you had police vehicles at different points along the way facilitating your travel?
No, I don't believe we did.
Okay. Did you have your lights on? Your blue lights on?
No.
Okay. And during this trip, you were driving on the highway at about 70 or 75.
Correct.
Okay. And was that the trip that you were describing with Mr. McCauley on direct examination? The one from Faston Street up via the Turnpike and then down 95, 128 to 95?
Yes.
Okay. And those were the times where it took you about 10 minutes from Faston Street to the Turnpike entrance and about 10 minutes to the 128 tolls?
Correct.
Okay. And you also did some other driving for purposes of this case, is that right?
That's correct.
So on October 15, you took a drive from Ronald C. Meyer Drive to the South Street Cafe, correct?
Correct.
And that was with Trooper Donovan?
Yes.
And then you took another drive from Ronald C. Meyer Drive to the police station, North Attleboro Police Station?
Correct.
And then a drive from the cell tower at Exit 2 up to Blue Hills Express?
Yes.
Okay. And those were done at about 6:30, starting at 6:30 in the evening?
Correct.
And you first did the one to South Street Cafe,
Yes.
and then the shorter trip to the police station,
Yes.
and then the longer trip from the cell tower up to Blue Hills Express.
Correct.
And then you did some more traveling on October 20th, 2014?
Yes.
And this was about 7:30 in the evening?
Approximately.
And you went from the Blue Hills Express up to Facein Street?
Yes.
And you were traveling 55 miles an hour on that trip?
I don't recall my speed on that trip.
Let's show this report.
Is that a copy of your report?
Yes, it is.
So the first trip I asked you about was from Blue Hill Express to Facein Street, and I asked you if that was about 55 miles an hour?
And that's accurate.
Okay. And then you took a second leg of that trip from Facein Street down to the intersection of Route 128 and 95, correct?
Yes.
And were you going about 55 miles an hour for that trip as well?
Yes.
And that trip you took via the Mass Turnpike, correct?
Correct.
So this time, unlike the one you described in direct examination, you were not going 70 to 75, you were just going 55.
Correct.
Okay. And then on October 24th, you did some more drives, is that right?
Yes.
That's this past year, right?
That's correct.
And at this point, you drove from the Blue Hill Express to Facein Street,
Yes.
right? And this time you set it on cruise control to 75 miles an hour,
Yes.
right? And this was 10:30 at night.
Correct.
Were there any police vehicles accompanying you so that you could actually go that fast
No,
without, you just set it on and went,
I did.
and you were able to do that,
Yes.
okay? And then you drove the local route from Melnia Cass to 10 Facein Street, right?
Yes.
Did you have any local police helping with that drive?
No.
Okay. And then you took a drive that same night from 128 and Interstate 95 in Canton down to Ronald C. Meyer.
Yes.
All right. And then finally, you drove from the cell tower up to exit 8 in Sharon. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that the vicinity of one of those cell towers you were talking about?
There is a cell tower in that location.
All right. And then you did another drive on October 7th, where you went from Ronald C. Meyer Drive to South Street Cafe, correct?
Yes.
And that on that occasion, you went about 80 miles an hour.
That's correct.
All right. Now, you referred to some video that you obtained. You had the Facein Street video from 9 Facein Street. I think you referred to that, right?
Yes.
So that had already been collected by Boston police officers by the time you were asked to get involved in that. Is that right?
That's correct.
And I think you referred to a Detective Sergeant Stratton,
Yes.
and he's with the Boston Police Department,
Yes, sir.
and he was asked to assist in this investigation.
Yes.
And it was he who determined that there was surveillance footage from city-operated cameras that might be relevant to the investigation, correct?
Yes.
And he interfaced with the appropriate city agency and furnished those images to you.
Yes.
And he, in fact, accompanied you to several of the local establishments in the city of Boston as you went around trying to collect video evidence that might be relevant.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Sir, is it fair to say one of your purposes in doing a drive is to determine what speed between, what speed can be traveled between certain points?
Yes.
Okay. And when Mr. Rankin was asking you questions about some of these routes of travel, when you first did the first drive, did you have some information?
Yes.
Okay. As time went on, in terms of when he asked about later drives, did you have additional information?
Yes.
And with that additional information, what were you attempting to determine by doing subsequent drives?
To determine if that drive was actually possible.
Okay.
The information I'm being given, does it fit with the type of drive that could be done?
Okay. And did you also make efforts to determine, if possible, at what speed possible?
Yes.
Okay. And were you able to determine from your travel between these points that all those times, those drive times that you've testified to about are or were possible?
Objection.
Sustained.
Okay. When you've described certain driving times in this courtroom, were you able to drive between those 2 points in that time?
Yes.
Okay. And when I was asking you questions about those drive times, did any of them rely on police escorts?
No, not an escort.
And the additional information that caused you to go and do additional drives were what?
Sustained.
Okay. Well, let me just ask you this. Had you reviewed certain surveillance in the course of this investigation?
Yes.
And did you review certain documents?
Yes.
And did you also review certain toll records?
Yes.
And as a result of that, what, if any, effect did that have on your determining or going back out and driving again?
Well, those records would eliminate some of the routes that I may have originally run. It would narrow down the different routes that could have been taken.
Okay. Now, initially, and I think Mr. Rankin had asked you on one of your first trips to Boston from Ronald C. Meyer, you drove 95 to 128 to Fayston Street, and then the return essentially backtracked that same route. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Did you later have any information that caused you to change the return route?
Yes.
And what information was that?
Specifically, a toll booth photo in Weston.
And as a result of that, did you then drive from Fayston on the return, drive up and down the Mass Pike?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing else.
When you say you didn't have a police escort, there were occasions when police were assisting in this.
I'm just going to, I think the question was just on the times that he's testified to here today. He didn't rely on the police escort. Not that he didn't have one on the time that Mr. Rankin had questioned.
Let me try to put it.
Okay.
There were other police officers accompanying you on these various travels. Is that fair?
I don't recall all the locations they were at.
But there were police officers in various locations on different drives. Is that right?
On one drive in particular.
Yeah. And which drive was that?
That was the first drive that you referenced in June 24th, I believe.
And that was when you got into the city of Boston and you had a bunch of Boston police cruisers that were facilitating your travel.
No, sir.
No? Okay. What were they doing?
I don't believe we had any Boston police cruisers there.
State troopers?
I don't recall there being anyone there. There was no one there in Boston.
I may have misunderstood you. I thought that you said that you had police officers involved in the route of travel in some way?
Yes.
Okay, tell me what that was.
I remember there being police officers in the North Attleboro area, the industrial park area, at certain intersections. Their exact purpose, I don't recall what it was.
Okay, you didn't arrange for them to be there,
I did not.
but someone arranged for them to be there, clearly.
That's correct.
And do you recall traveling in Boston with Detective Ciccio and a trooper, a different one on each trip, and having police cars in the city of Boston facilitating your travel?
I would say no.
You wouldn't, and you haven't looked at video and seen
I haven't looked at the video.
blue flashing lights that you passed by?
I don't recall.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Nothing else, thank
You
you.
may step down.
Thank you.
Is that all for today, Mr.
Yes, Your Honor, that other witness would be carried over to tomorrow.
We're going to stop at this point today. Also, tomorrow I have something I need to go over with counsel in the morning before the first witness testifies. So instead of having you, I'm going to suggest you come a little later tomorrow, so minimize the amount of time you have to wait in the jury room. So why don't you be at, arrive at 9:30 at the parking lot. Please keep your mind suspended. Don't discuss the case. Family member, stranger, acquaintance, anyone at all. You can't talk about this case, your jury service, or Mr. Hernandez, or anything at all related to this case. And if anyone starts any form of communication with you, asking you a question, anything at all, please just stop it, end it immediately. Please continue to avoid anything about the case or Mr. Hernandez that could appear in any newspaper, or radio, or television, or magazine, or any other news media, and also anything that might appear in any social media, Facebook, Twitter, any other form of social media. Please do not do any research about this case, Mr. Hernandez, or anything at all that you think could be relevant to the case in any way, in any location.